All right, hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. As always, don't forget, share, like, subscribe, leave your comments below. We're trying to grow our channel and we appreciate your support in doing that. And today we're going to overview the Dutch buckets that we're putting in. We're going to do about 60 buckets to start. Eventually this whole bay will be the Dutch buckets. We'll grow tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, and who knows what else there. The bigger plant crops, and then yeah, it's always difficult. This side over here is our lettuce bay, lettuce microgreens, and all of our NFT channel, which is the nutrient film technology channels. Those are the real thin channels that get the nutrient water, and so your more shallow rooted plants can grow in that. So let's go down here and I'll show you what we're doing with the construction of the Dutch buckets and kind of overview them slightly. They're also called Bato buckets, so either Dutch buckets or Bato buckets are pretty much the same thing. So let's go down here and take a look. So these Bato buckets I've already put in place. Hopefully you can hear okay. I'll back away from the fans here in a moment. So we got a reservoir buried in the ground. We actually are returning right now to the reservoir. There's an option where you could do a drain out and go drain to waste. We've done a lot of research on this. Both are fine, but if you have actually like a dosatron, which we were able to obtain when we bought these used greenhouses, you know, there's no real initial investment in dosing this reservoir to keep the nutrient level consistent. So there's a lot of debate online about whether to do a circulating or drain to waste. We're going to start doing it with circulating. We've got a sprinkler valve there. There's a float valve inside here, so there's supply. So when the water level gets below a certain level, it kicks on and refills the reservoir, and then the dosatron will measure the nutrients and then add nutrients and or pH down to bring the pH down on the water. We have the same over there on the lettuce side, so it'll run the same way because it'll be recirculating. And so literally these buckets will be full of perlite, maybe a layer of vermiculite. And so when the water gets down there in the bottom at a certain height, then it just drains out into the drain pipe, and then it goes. Now, drain to waste, you want to try to minimize any overflow, so you're always trying to get just the right amount of nutrient water to the plant where it's getting it all it needs but not draining a lot into the line. With the recirculating, you don't have to worry about that precision as much, and so that's one of the advantages of recirculating. So we've got these set up right now. We've got 12 in each row, 5 rows, and that'll be 60 buckets. But as you can see, now we can extend, you know, our drains all the way down to the end. I think calculated we can do about 300 buckets. Typically each bucket gets 2 plants per bucket. We'll actually be doing a trellising system overhead, and I'll show you that in another video. But literally we're constructing this right now, and so we lay our tape measure out. There's debate on whether you want to go 16 or 18 inch centers. Since we got quite a bit of space, we're going to go 18 inch centers. And so we literally just take our Sharpie and we'll go in here and mark it. Now, I made me a cheat sheet because adding in my head multiples of 18 is not my strong suit. So I know that 18, 36, 54, 72, 90, 108, 126, 144, you see, you get the gist. And so I just keep that there. And so I make sure I get, and I don't put a bucket right at the end. So my first bucket hole is going to be at 18, and then looking at my sheet, it's going to be at 36, and then it's going to be at 54, and then it's going to be at 72. And all I'm doing there is just making a reference mark, and then when I come in and drill the holes. So I'll go ahead and mark the rest of these all the way down to 216, then we'll drill our holes. Okay, so we've got both lines marked, both pipes are marked, and I'll show you now how we drill. So the bucket in the side profile, you know, basically looks like this. So it's really made to sit on a certain size pipe with a certain size hole, and so you can literally just take and see that this type of hole saw is going to be about the right size to allow that to sit in there. It doesn't, you want it to just go in easy. You don't want to have to sit there and, you know, try to finagle it in. So it's better that the hole's just slightly bigger. So I'm going to try to do this one-handed. So basically go on our mark and, you know, just eyeball it, get it right about the center, and then kind of have to watch, because when that first bit gets through, it really grabs. And so I've actually got the clutch set so it doesn't break my wrist. So I'm going to have to tighten that up a little bit. Hang on here, just set that phone down. I'll go up about 2 clicks on the clutch on the drill. There we go. Now, I do try to get the shavings out, but I don't worry too much about it, because these shavings, when they go into the reservoir, will actually float. So we can go in there with just a little skimmer net and skim them out. But that plug gets in the end of that drill bit, and so kind of unfortunately you have to go over here, take a screwdriver, push it out before you drill the next hole. And so that's it. So then I'll just take this bucket to show you. We'll come in here and we'll vacuum up, you know, all these remnants. But it literally just goes there, sits right there in the hole. And so that's it. And then we'll fill it up with the media, and it'll be ready to go. So got a few holes to drill, and then we'll be setting the buckets on them. Okay, we got the holes drilled. Now we'll vacuum it up and we'll set the buckets in place. So here's what it looks like with the holes drilled. Of course, there's the remnants. Now we'll come in and vacuum all that out and get these buckets and set them in place. We'll take a look at it when that's all done. Okay, so we've got the buckets laid out. We've got all the lines on. I'm gonna, just for the sake, show you installing one of these. Basically, they're a 1/2-inch oval pipe. They're a soft-sided pipe. Use it throughout the system. Got a bunch of these quick connects. Well, they're not quick connects, but you'll see when I put it on there. Hopefully you can hear me over these fans. So we got it coming out of the pump into a T. It goes out there. The valves are there so that I can regulate the flow on any leg, and or just shut off a leg if needed while the others still run. Basically just took cut off tool, marked out. I did this because I may want a bigger pump in there later. There's the pump, comes up, drill a hole. This just sits there. Electric comes out. And so let me take you over here. What'll happen is we'll fill these with perlite and vermiculite, probably perlite in the bottom, a layer of vermiculite halfway up, and then perlite on the top. But I'll do a video on that. And then the tomatoes and or the cucumbers or peppers or whatever else we grow will go in the buckets. And then the emitters will come off and they'll go into the bucket, probably 2 to each bucket since there'll be 2 plants. So let me try to show you real quick if I can. We're gonna see how this goes. Hopefully this won't fall down. Hopefully I can get this on screen. So basically, these are just reverse threaded, and you literally just put it over, push it on. It's kind of like a drip line. If you've ever done those valves on a drip line, it's exactly the same. And you just tighten this up, and then we'll run another one on down the buckets. And that's pretty much it. So we'll get this set up. We'll come back and finish it off. Okay, so we actually ran, since this is kind of my low side, I wanted to make sure that we were getting good drainage. I'm not worried about this side. It all drains down, this one drains, and I was wanting to make sure this one would drain back into the reservoir, which it does. So we ran some water into this bucket. We checked along here, pulled a couple of buckets out, made sure that it was flowing, looked in the reservoir, and yes, we're getting the flow back in. And so of course, again, we're only going to be putting as much water into these buckets as the plant requires. The drainage is really there just because you want to just barely exceed the amount that the plant requires. So you really don't want this thing flowing and running like the NFT channels over here that run continuously and just recycle non-stop. These will actually be on a timer, and then it'll administer some water, shut off, administer water, shut off, and you want it set so that, you know, it's just enough to where it's draining slightly, but not a ton. Now, with it being recirculating instead of draining to waste, you've got a little bit of forgiveness. So you can run a little bit more water than needed, and knowing it'll drain off and go right back into your reservoir. So I had a couple of little drips on a couple of them. All it took was tightening the fittings. On this tee right here, I may have to recut the end. Maybe it's got a burr or something and it's not seating well. But other than that, you know, I ran it with all the valves closed, and other than that drip there, and there was one over here, but I fixed it by just tightening the connection. So so far so good. And next we'll wash and put our perlite and vermiculite media in. We've got several big bags of it. I just don't know how far it's going to go. And then we'll go out to our field and we'll pull some cuttings. We'll cut some suckers off of some of the tomatoes, and we'll bring them in here and we'll transplant them in here. That'll save us 4 or 6 weeks, because it'll only take a couple of days for them to start rooting in and growing. Whereas if I started from seed, we would be looking at, you know, probably 4 weeks to get to where those suckers will be, maybe even 6 weeks. So it gives us a bit of a jump start. So we started filling some of the buckets. On these first two, I've got perlite halfway up, then about an inch of vermiculite, and then perlite. And these two buckets, I've just got perlite only. And we're going to plant the same type of tomatoes. We'll do a comparison to see how they do. We do have these cover lids. Initially, you want to put it right by the roots, but later you can move them out into those predetermined holes. That's to really keep, once you're running nutrient water in there, you don't want exposed sunlight, otherwise you start to get algae. And so that just helps prevent algae in the media. Fortunately, I had these at a supply house, Griffin's. It's literally 4 miles from us. They're a distribution warehouse. They don't always keep a lot of stuff in stock, but usually they have enough for me at a small scale. And so these have the 5 gallon per hour emitter on it, which will restrict the flow. In some cases you may not want that. And then the stake actually, as you see, maybe has hole that allows it to be distributed down in the media. So it literally comes out. It comes out of the tube and it runs down and it gets distributed right at wherever you stake this in. And so you want this right at the root zone. So we're going to get these punched in. You can buy a tool to do this. I just happen to have a all set that works pretty well. So just got this curved awl or punch tool. It puts a hole in the right size that those barbed emitters and or just straight through barbs will fit into the pipe and they won't leak. So we'll come back and show that. Probably I'll get a few cuttings. We'll step through that and we'll get them planted in here and start letting them root in so they can start to grow. All right, we've got our lines fitted in to the header pipe. I went ahead and tie wrapped just a little ways down so that it holds that distribution hose. Plus, if you have it right over the bucket, if those happen to leak, they leak into the bucket. We'll have to tie this one up a little better. It'll sit there. So now we'll remove these. We've got some suckers. We've trimmed them up. A couple of them have blooms and fruit clusters on them already. We're going to try using this little trowel, make a hole, stick them in pretty deep. That's why we trim the leaves up. That stem will just start to get root hairs all out from it. And so then we'll turn it on and let it run. We're not going to run any nutrient water tonight. We'll put nutrient water in it tomorrow. We don't want to shock the plant too much, so we'll just give it the water for now. Typically when you cut these, stick them in a jar of water. In about 2 days they start to root out. So we'll give them some water today and then we'll slowly start to increase the nutrient as it starts to develop its root hairs. So what I've done now is I've just taken my finger with these on so that I'll know approximately where I want to place the plant. I'll show you this last one one-handed. Try to. So just stick the trowel in, just give it a wiggle, creates a little gap. Take our plant, doesn't matter that that's curved or not curved, and we just stick it down in there. This one's an extra long one. Then I'll put these covers on and it'll be buttoned up. We'll be ready to turn it on. Okay, got them in there. They're going to be a little droopy for a day or two. They're not going to be happy, but they'll snap out of it. Let's go turn the water on, get it rolling. So I do want to show you something important. So we've hooked that up and we weren't getting any flow through these emitters. So sometimes those are what's called a pressure compensating emitter, and they'll literally need a certain pressure to run. They might reduce to a certain pressure to get to the flow rate. And so I've got this one hooked up, and as you can see, my little pump is not pumping. So I happen to have some T-barbs that I could just basically lop this off and reuse this hole. And now you can see we've got flow through both of these. So we're now getting, our water into there. So I'm gonna have to go and basically cut these out. These were a pre-made setup, and that's what you run into sometimes is I needed them to get started today. Instead of ordering them in, I had to take what they got. Unfortunately, those emitters aren't going to work with the size pump I got, and so I have to bypass that element. But the stakes and the tubing work fine, and fortunately I had these T-barbs already on hand. If I'd have had straight barbs, I'd have just replaced every emitter with a barb, but I don't have those, so I've only got the T-barbs, and so I'll just run off of one of these holes. As you can see, no water's coming through that emitter, so it doesn't matter. I did leave that a little longer in case I had to double it over and tape it off. But we're getting water in there, and we'll do the rest of them. We only got 4 buckets on this row. We're starting them small just to see how they do. We'll obviously then, continue on out. But wanted to get these going and see how they make the transition. Okay, we got the modification made. I'm just leaving those old emitters in there. They're acting as plugs. And we checked, and all these stakes are dripping. Actually got them a little more than dripping. They're running a little bit, but it's a recirculating system, so that's the beauty of it. I want them to have a little extra water right now as opposed to too little. All right, that's it for this session. Don't forget, share, subscribe, like, comment. In the comment section, we like to hear your thoughts. Anything that we have overlooked or you need clarification on. But again, we're trying to grow the channel. Hope you find it helpful, interesting, enjoyable. Thanks for watching.